Alright, so here I'm going to talk about abortion, the question of abortion from the perspective of natural law. Although I want to first go over with you abortion in the context of law of nature. If you recall from my previous video, I explained that these two philosophical viewpoints diverge wildly, and we'll see this in the case of abortion. One of the problems with law of nature is that in that particular philosophy, there's a real difficulty in finding where rights originate from. Right? In natural law, rights come from God, but in law of nature, where do they come from? And it is especially evident in the question of abortion. I'll give you some examples here. In law of nature, they first tend to look for our source of rights from something inside the baby, right? Do our rights come from the brain, right? At what level of development does the brain have to be at before we gain our rights? Is it when the baby feels pain? Is it when the baby has a heartbeat? Do our rights come from our heartbeat? Is it if the baby's healthy, right? If the baby has a disability or not, or do our rights come from our health? Is it when it looks like a baby? Do our rights come from what we look like? Is it the baby's ability to survive? They call it viability, right? Do our rights come from our ability to survive? And so, in some cases, they also look outside the baby for a source of the baby's rights. It could be something like the mother's wishes, or the circumstances of the pregnancy. Right? Do we lose our rights because of a sin of our father? Do our rights come from whether we're in the womb or not? And so, in law of nature, it really suffers in this case from a sense of arbitrariness. Who chooses when a person has rights, right? Who chooses what level of development of the brain? In the case of natural law, the question of abortion is actually really simple. It doesn't have all these difficulties because we know that our rights come from God, and it makes the question of abortion very simple for natural law, because we know if we know our rights come from God, we don't have to look inside the baby to determine when those rights begin, right? We don't look for brain development because our rights don't come from the brain; they come from God. And so, basically, if our right to life comes from God, it's simple. Our right to life then must begin at the beginning of life, right? Even at the one cell, the very first one cell of life, is our right to life, because our right comes from not some characteristic of ourselves, other than the fact that our nature is human, but rather our rights come from God. So a lot of people might counter this by saying, well, an unborn child is only a potential person and not an actual person, and therefore is not protected as a person under natural law. And this counter object, unfortunately, falls into the same trap of being arbitrary as the law of nature examples. If you're going to say a person is a potential person for a certain period of time, and then a person later, who decides when that change happens? And also, how do we know that that point is the point that God considers that point of change, right? Because in natural law, it all has to originate from God. All right, so I don't believe that she is a potential person. I believe the unborn child is an actual person. However, let's go a different direction and consider how it would hold up against natural law if the unborn child was only a potential person. So if you recall, in the previous video I gave you an example using an airplane. We're going to return to that airplane example in order to answer this question. All right. So we know it's wrong for someone to destroy an owner's plane, but what if the owner didn't have a plane but only had all the plane parts in his hangar, and he planned to assemble the plane? So all the plane parts is our potential plane. So if someone destroys those plane parts, isn't that still wrong? So yes, it is. So if we extrapolate that to natural law, then we can know that it is still wrong, it's still against natural law to end the life of a potential person, because even a potential person is protected, has rights from God. So the potential person argument doesn't hold up against natural law. Natural law still protects all life from the point when the sperm interacts with the egg, creating a person from the very beginning. All right, so that is natural law in regard to abortion. I'm going to leave you with a question that you can try to answer in the comments. The question goes, what does natural law say about using recreational marijuana? All right, so when you answer this, try to remember to use natural law. Remember, natural law originates from God. Don't fall into law of nature. And also, you deserve extra points if you use an airplane example in your explanation. So have fun with that. The next section, I'm going to talk to you about natural law and the church and government.